Hi, I'm Chris.
And I'm Cole.
Today we're going to take old VHS tapes and turn them into pen books. And welcome to our home. Today we're going to take these VHS tapes, well, the cases to them, and we're going to turn them into pen cases, or if you're a lady, we're going to turn these into pen purses. And so I'm going to attempt to show you how to do that with as little difficulty as possible. And so first thing you want to always make sure of is that your pen case is not brittle. And so if it's a brittle pen case, what'll happen is it'll crack out real easy. Now they're already fragile because they're plastic, but as long as you have a good one that's been kept inside and it's not been out in a storage building or something like that, it will be in good enough shape. Now this one is in pristine shape. And what we're going to do with this one is we're going to give this away on our website at managingmickey.com. And so if you would like this, you can go there and you can sign in and you can email us from the site, and we will enter you into a drawing, and then we will announce that on an upcoming episode. So this is the case we're going to use today, The Nightmare Before Christmas. And so a few of the things you're going to need, and we'll list these in the video, but you'll need a pair of pliers. Actually, you'll need 2 pairs of pliers. And then you're also going to need some sort of clips or clasps here. We use the heart-shaped ones, or we use these that have a rotating swivel clasp. And so that swivel allows it to move. Now that's only if you're doing the pen purse. And then of course you'll need maybe some sort of metal chain to make the strap for the purse. And then to connect the chain and things, you'll need these jump rings, and I'll show you how to use those later. We bought extra heavy duty jump rings. And then also, if you're making the pen purse, you'll need these 2 of these D rings, and these are 1 inch in size. Now they sell all sorts of different ones. These just happen to be very heavy duty and nice. And then also you'll need a piece of ribbon of your choice. Ribbon of your choice that's heavy duty enough that it'll hold a little bit of weight. We use the gross grain ribbon, and it's also 7/8 inch gross grain ribbon. And so we'll get to that when we get to making the strap. Before then, the other things you'll need is something to put underneath your cork tiles. Now what we do is we use these cork tiles, and you can get 4 cuts out of a cork tile, and you could make it out of 1 cork tile and just glue 2 pieces together inside the VHS, or you can use something that's cheaper like cardboard, or like we had some scrap cardboard we've used, or you can even use this foam board, and it's got a pretty good thickness to it that'll allow you to be able to glue that and then the cork board to save money. And so you'll need those things, and then I like to also take and put in a piece of felt to protect the pins from both sides when you shut it, so they don't clank together and scratch all up. And so that's what this is for. Outside of that, you'll need a pair of scissors. I like to use an X-Acto knife for the cutting of the cork to keep it smooth and nice. You'll need glue sticks and of course a glue gun, which we have plugged up and heating. And then you'll need a lighter so that you can seal the ends of your ribbon if you're using the ribbon. And then I like to use a cutting board when it comes to these, or if I'm cutting cardboard, because it cuts straighter than I can cut with scissors. So that's our suggestion. Now you'll also need, if you're making the strap for the purse, you'll need a couple of pins to pin your ribbon so you know where you're going to sew. If you're sewing, if you're going to hot glue that, you could do that without needing the pins. But I like to have my wife sew it because what it'll do is it'll be stronger.
And now's a good time to mention, if you are a young kid or something like that, ask a parent for help in this part because you're using matches and
these X-Acto knives and cutting boards and all that stuff is very dangerous. If you're a young child, please make sure your parent's there to help you and supervise. If you're a parent, just use caution and always cut away from you. Okay, so let's get going here. One of the things I like to do is go ahead and make all my cuts. As you see here, I've got a piece of paper, and this piece of paper has both the type of cuts I want for my inside of the video. And so what I like to do is take this, and then I'll make a template out of cardboard or heavier cardstock. And so I've done that out of a piece, I'm pretty cheap, so I've done that out of a piece of cardboard that was in the back of some specialty paper I had, and so it was real easy to cut out once I had the shape. And so what I've done is drawn that out for you guys, and if you'll log on to managingmickey.com, you can also find this available for a free download in a PDF that you can use for your VHS. And we're talking about the average VHS that's shaped like this on the inside. There are some that are not shaped like this, and it will not work for those. But this one it will. And so first thing I would like to do is cut my cork because it's the hardest thing. I've cut one piece already for you so we could save time, but I'll show you guys how to cut the other. And so what I do is I'll cut the piece and then I'll rotate my board around so that I can get 4 cuts and still have a big piece of square in the middle. And so I take and line it up on the side and at the end where it meets, so that I'm only having to cut 2 sides and round my corners. And so if I can cut the 2 sides and round my corners, what that does is allows me for the least amount of cuts possible. But I would not advise cutting directly against your table. So I would take something like this foam board and put it underneath so that as you cut, you can hear the difference from when you're cutting through the cork board and your razor knife hits the foam board, so you don't cut all the way through. Saves a big scratch in the table that way. And so you just line it up on here, and you can go as slow as you want and do it as many times as you want, but I would do a light score all the way down the straight edge portion of your template. And then I would do one a little bit thicker. And so what it does by cutting such a little amount with a razor blade each time is it allows your corkboard not to fray on the ends or pull apart and look cheap, but it gives it a nice crisp, clean cut. And you can probably hear, hopefully you guys can hear that, it's a different sound once it gets to underneath the corkboard. And I'll cut back like this. Just make sure your fingers are out of the way and cut straight along that line. And the next should get me all the way through and cut a lot cleaner and more simple. So as a check, rotate that up, there we go. So now then that I'm done with this portion, I can just set it to the side since I have my 2 finished edges. And so I don't need this template anymore either. So I'll clear my workstation like that. I do need to finish rounding my corners. I'll put this up on there, and I just kind of saw down on the corners to round them off like this. What that allows you to do is get the same consistency on all your corners. So if you guys look, you can kind of see the rounded corners. They're not always going to be perfect, but you're also making this, so we'll see how it turns out in the end. It should be just fine. So I like to put it in here and check it and make sure it's going to actually fit. See, I'm a little tight there, so I may have cut that one just a touch too big when I was tracing around. But I think it'll fit. It will. It'll just be a real tight fit. And so when I get it done, it'll look similar to that. But don't push it in too far, just barely, so that you can still get your finger under it and get it back out. But that'll give me the opportunity to test it and make sure I don't need to go back and recut right now before I get too far in. The opposite side, you're going into that more narrow section. And so mine fits. So we'll set this to the side. We'll come back to that in a minute. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut these to fit what you need. And the measurement on that is 4 inches wide, and I believe it's 7 and a quarter. I'll tell you in just a second. And I like to use my cutting board for that. And so what I'm going to do is cut first, and I'm going to use this foam board. I'm going to cut it down into a narrower piece that I know is wide enough for my, I'll use the razor knife. Pretty smart. And this foam board you can get at Dollar Tree for $1. It's not expensive. Always cut away from you. So now that I've got that cut, I can take it and slide it through and cut this into sections that are about 4 inches in width. So put this over here to 4 inches. So that's 4 inches. And so this cuts a whole lot straighter than my hand can, and it's a whole lot faster than I am. With cardboard, you'll need for sure 4 pieces of your thinner cardboards, but with this I only need 2. But my first one I noticed had a rounded corner, and so that'll make my corners weak for my cork board, so I wanted to get rid of that. So I'm left with an edge that still needs to be cut off, and if I remember right, it's 7 and just under 5/8. So I'm going to cut it just a hair over 7 1/2. And I'll test it real quick, just to make sure I'm right. And I'm off, so I'm going to get a better measurement. Yep, 7 1/4. So your measurements on your foam board cut here is 4 inches by 7 1/4. So we'll cut both of these down to 7 1/4, and then that part will be finished. This will minimize, using this foam board, how much glue that you're going to need, because what you're going to do is you're going to glue this foam board in, and then you're going to glue your cork board on top. And if you're worried about the thickness being enough, you can take a pin and you can measure the width of a pin when you push it through to make sure it's not going to stab all the way through. Okay, so one of the things we want to make sure and do is always keep your workstation clean. So I've taken a moment here to clean some of the clutter off so that I can keep track of what I'm doing. Made me remember I missed a step, and that step is we need to cut this down to size. Now remember, we were at 7 1/4 by 4, so I'm going to cut this at 7 1/4 by 6 because I'm going to tuck that other 2 inches underneath. And so let me get this cutting board back out because I'm a firm believer that the cutting board works the best. And so I'm going to take and push. I didn't describe this a while ago, but when you're making a cut and you need it to be a certain width on your cut, always make that width to the inside of the cutting board. So you would put the longer piece out maybe. And so I want this to be 6. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to line it up here on the 6. I'm going to put my hand here on this side of the guard. And then with a cutting board, you're going to have to take the opportunity to slowly kind of push with a light amount of pressure towards your main board part with your slider or with your cutting arm. And then I kind of give it a little bit of a shake as I go. Y'all can probably hear that noise. That's the cutting of that felt. So all this was a 33-cent at Hobby Lobby. You can get it in any craft store, piece of felt. And so that would most definitely cut down to size. And then of course it's a standard width, so we need to cut that down as well to 7 1/4. Same story. Didn't quite make it in the beginning. It may seem weird that I'm making it shake, but what it does is it allows it to cut smoother. If I don't do that, I find it jams and it won't cut all the way through. See, once I did that, it cut through just fine. That's just something I've figured out over cutting stuff on this board. I like it better than a rotary tool because I've cut my finger with the rotary tool. I've cut my rulers all up with the rotary tool, and this just seemingly works better. Alright, so we get this back out and we get our first piece of foam. And so what we're going to do is go ahead and touch that and see if it's hot. I was just kidding. Alright, so what we're going to do is...
Say, man. I thought you were going to tell me to touch the...
Yeah, don't touch the end of the glue gun. It's very hot. And so we're going to go through here and we're going to put glue all along your outer edges because that's where it's going to be the weakest. And then you get a glue stick ready for me here. And what will have to happen is we have a new glue gun. Put it in. Thanks. And we have a new glue gun, but it is lost. And even if it wasn't lost, I don't like it because it is made like a pen, and so like a writing pen. So what happens is as you're riding along, it doesn't like to make connection very well, and it shoots a lot of glue out at the very start. When you click it, it'll boom and just shoot wads of glue out, and it doesn't operate the same. It's not as much precision, so I don't really like it. But this old one doesn't like to catch. So I put all this in here like that, and we'll do the other side the same way. And so now,
glued on there.
Yeah, make sure and always press down in all the areas. Make sure it compresses flat. That is one of the things I like about using this over the cardboard, is the cardboard doesn't always like to go flat against there. So now then you could kind of look and see, hey, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to look pretty pristine there, as you can see. And then when it folds up, obviously, you've got to not make this cork board go over those inner edges, because that's what this little section here slides down into to close the VHS cassette case. But before I glue that on, I want to make sure that I have placed this far enough across here that it will cover whatever pins I have on the top. And I'm actually going to put this on this side with the pins, with the felt to the inside. And the reason I like to do that is I don't like to lay it open like this. I like to just fold that up and it sit right here in the center when people are going to look. And so what we want to do next is, once we've got that firmed all the way over like that, give myself just an extra hint of fabric there, and then we're going to come through here and we're going to glue it down just like this. And I'm going to put a little bit on this outer edge because I didn't go that deep. So I'm going to take this and get it on my finger like that, and then I'm going to take it, I'm going to lift it up, I'm going to roll it over and press, and then press it out all the way, because what I'm essentially trying to do is make sure it's flat. As long as it stays flat, what will happen is it'll allow me to be able to glue it and it remain flat there. So I've got a little bit hanging over the edge where it glued off, so I'm just going to take that and trim it off. Nobody will ever see it anyhow. That's why I pick a felt that'll match my case itself. And so now then when I glue that in, it'll look like that, and this will come over the edge and will protect my pins when I close my book. So next move is to put glue on the back of this. And so there we have our pen book. So when we open it, you'll have a place for pens on both sides. And so if you're like me, you could just take this, toss it in your backpack, and it'll hold about 30 pens, give or take 5 depending on the size. We filled one a day or so ago. We'll show you a picture of that in just a second. And we did one the other day, and I think we had right around 31 pens in it, and there was some very large pens included in that. And so we'll go ahead here in just a second and we'll start building the chain for if you want to make it into a pen purse.